There they
So
are.
there they are.
Also, Ace, you look really familiar. Have you been at any populist meetings in the last 6 months or so?
No, I literally just finished paramedic school, so I've been super eaten up by that. I have literally not done anything since like Axeman 2017. That was my last event.
Okay, and I haven't done anything ever, so not really. I mean,
So we're here.
Not unless are you also Namron?
Hmm?
Are you in the Ada area?
I'm in the Ada area, yes.
Okay, so that might be why I'm familiar. I live out there.
You do?
Mm-hmm. I'm from
So
Ada.
that's
Start showing up to Oak Spring meetings.
So that's technically now Oak Springs.
Yeah.
Amanda,
Springs.
no, I cannot hear you.
Start showing
Yeah.
up to meetings.
Go ahead and give it a try.
I am talking right now. I don't have audio muted.
We can hear you now.
Yay.
I can hear
Okay.
you.
This is my work computer connected to my phone. Let me go get you on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hello, Mike. Hello, Your Excellency.
Let me turn it up for you. Okay, say something else. I can check the volume.
Hello, Your Excellency. It's wonderful to have you here.
Hi.
Everyone, to introduce you, this is His Excellency Harabia Jan. He was the third king of Onsteora and is a lion of Onsteora. With him is his lady, Mistress Alexandra Oliphants. She is a mistress of the Laurel. And they have seen some history, and I'm hoping that they might be willing to share a story or two.
That's a really nice way to say it. These are old people.
We did get a request earlier for information about the lions, what their responsibilities are, what they do for the kingdom, stories about lions. I don't know if you're willing to delve into any of that, or if you have a specific story that you wanted to share with us already.
Well, okay, I take it the yellow band around my picture means I can talk.
It means that you're the predominant talker right now.
Oh, okay. I'm just ignorant of how this all works.
No worries.
Well, going back to the lions being founded and what they grew into is, again, well, it's a long, everything I can talk about is a long story. Before I go, I ought to make the disclaimer that I am largely a heretic. You know, I've got my view, and my view is usually not in line with the mainstream as far as opinions. Thing is, I share that quality with the first three princes and first four kings of Onsteora. All of us were somewhat like that. The Order of the Lions was established during Willow's reign, the first reign in Onsteora, not as Queen of Ottenville. And the Outlands had an Order of the Lion of the Outlands. And they had this fellow there whose name escapes me at the moment, who had hair, long hair down below his shoulders, and it was a golden blonde. And everybody said it looked like a lion's mane. So because he was a cool guy, they gave him he was a lion of the Outlands. And it went absolutely nowhere. And as everybody who knows her knows, Willow is a pushy lady. You know, she gets an idea, she gets a thought. That's your wine.
No, this is yours. I found your glass.
Mine was empty.
Yeah, I refilled it.
Oh, okay.
There's this thing called
This is their thanks I get.
Anyway, you can hear how I'm talking when I say I'm a heretic. You know, that's how it goes. And Willow wanted to make something more out of it. Because,
Jan,
again,
can I
this
pause
is
you for just a
story-
moment?
Hmm?
Can I pause you for just a moment? I want
Sure.
to make sure that you are aware we are recording.
Recording.
Oh yeah, I
So-
know that.
Okay, I just want to, I'm letting everybody know that as they come in, so that
Nothing
they
I wouldn't say to Willow.
understood. I'm just
Willow
making
would
sure
tell
that you,
she's pushy.
yes, and she
Willow-
would, and she is. This is-
Willow decided that I should be a knight sometime in the past
Before you
and
did go
tried
back
to
in.
help me on the way. And I mean, I'm a very intelligent person. I could see what was going on, and I appreciated the help. But in those days, knighthood was a lot more concerned with courtly graces and presence in the kingdom and it was not just fighting now. However, you had to be a kick-ass fighter to be in, especially in the new group we were in. And Willow, I mean, Jonathan's no slouch in this, but Willow was the prime motivator, at least at the time. That's what everybody believed in the establishment of the Order of the Lions. And she had the greatest respect for, well, he was originally Red Orm, but the College of Heralds wouldn't accept that because there's a book somewhere with a character called Red Orm. I mean, a guy with a red hair or red beard, I mean, you're going to call him Red, you know. In any case, as Duke Lloyd would be willing, well, he'd tell you at all times, we'd sit around drinking more than we should. And as she can guarantee, more than I should is quite a bit.
Yes, it is.
But he would talk about how Red Orm could have a camera with a telephoto lens hanging around his neck and talk to you at an event, and you would walk away believing you'd just spoken to a 9th century Dane. He could just go into that. You know, persona in early on Steora wasn't like what they do at Penzic with their little rope and sacred ground and stuff. Persona was something you slid into and out of constantly. The tournament where I got my finger busted real badly, Lloyd wanted it was a snowball type tournament, so you were supposed to be leading. And he wanted you to lead as your persona. If you were a Roman, you could stand in the back and give orders. If you were a Norman, you'd better be in the front leading the charge. I'm not going to digress to that story. I'm trying to set the stage because this sort of attitude that was on Steora was what the idea of lions grew out of. The first lions were all close personal friends. Orm Skilbidig, the premier lion, is probably my oldest and best friend in the SCA. Ivar Battleskull, very close friend, and the three of us used to hang out together. I made the third lion. I was the fourth, and when we all got together, we talked about it, and I'm an idea person, and I like to play a better game. And this is part of what the Order of the Lions is about, at least to the early part of the Order, is that I've put it that the SCA is like a three-legged stool. And they're all real and they're all important. Without them, we couldn't exist. One is we are a 20th century club with 20th century rules, and the 20th century politics affect what we do and can't do. That's there. That's important. That's part of it. there is what I call the joke. And you see this constantly in royal courts, where they will refer to, well, the only one I can think of is an old story, but it was like at a Namron protectorate out by Lake Thunderbird. A jetliner flew a different landing pattern and came very close to our campsite. And the king, no, it wasn't even the king. Was it a king? Might have been. This might have been before we had a king here. But I think it was the king jumped off of his throne and said, "Bring me my crossbow. There's a dragon." You know, and it's simple, straightforward, you know, but it's a joke. It's kind of the guy who grows up in the slums of a big city and look at me, I'm a noble knight, ha, ha, ha. Which leads me to the other leg. Because, I mean, the joke is there. I mean, go to any court, go to anywhere. People, we can laugh at each other. We can laugh at what we're doing. We can laugh with the juxtaposition of the 21st century and medieval values and things. The other one, I've gone through conniptions trying to get a proper name for. Because, you know, at one time I talk about the dream, but no, that's not it. Because people talk, I mean, I remember the silly people come in and they're fairly newcomers and they get mad at somebody over some silly little slight and then they want them removed or punished for being traitors to the dream. And no, the dream isn't something you dragoon people into. I mean, people get misty-eyed and they make little songs and poems, but that's not what it's about. The name's escaping me. Oh, go ahead and show.
I'll see if I can get this over there.
Can you see this?
Those are the first 4 lions.
I want that picture. Give me that picture.
This is the first 4 lions with Pepin, who isn't the 5th one, but is still Pepin.
And that would be why I can't have that picture.
Anyway, this was, and you see, we used to do non-official, anyway, going down to the third leg of the stool. The third leg is, and the best way I can use right now is a reality. You see it sometimes when they ask knights, you know, a knight wants to swear personal fealty. And he'll go up there and it's mumble, mumble, mumble with the king and nobody can hear it. And it's not good court procedure, but there is an emotional reality. There is a real bond. There are real values involved here. Mm-hmm. And this level touches anybody who's worth their salt in the SCA. The thing is, you get any one of the 3 too far up there and it's out of kilter. You get a king who runs his court and is laughing at himself and joking too much, the court falls flat. You get somebody who gets, I mean, I hear, because Lloyd was the first one to do this. Who was the herald? The best herald ever?
I think it's Anburn, but...
No. The guy who wrote Burden of the Crown.
Was it Corwin?
No.
No, Burden of the Crown
Baldwin
is a
of
song.
Erebor.
Baldwin of Erebor. There we go. You see, that was back when you could make Tolkien references in your naming and stuff. This guy was a fantastic herald. Anyway, he wrote a song called The Burden of the Crown. And he could sing it and he could accompany himself on a lute. And a few kings got very taken by it.
1 second, Jen. I think we have a question for you. Go ahead, sure. Helena. Did you have a question?
I found not quite a question. I think I found The Burden of the Crown a recording of it on YouTube.
Yes.
I found
Oh,
I found
Yeah,
a playlist.
the battle now is ended. The night is growing. The day is growing long, though I may see the
it
sunset.
was god
I'll not
awful
live to
popular.
see the dawn.
I
You
didn't-
know,
I regret that I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, and he could say, and it's a tearjerker, but it's a tearjerker that it's easy to get into if you can identify with a king dying and trying to find his son before he dies. You know, in any case, Lloyd, our second king, would be upset with this because he got tired of seeing there were the dwarves of Ottenville. We were part of Ottenville.
Very tall people.
You had to be over 6 feet tall. You had to have facial hair. You had to, they had all these requirements, and basically you had to be a giant, to be a dwarf. And they would get all emotional and teary-eyed and weeping. See, if I don't drink wine, I'm going to sound like I'm crying.
That's
As
a different excuse.
our fourth king
it'll
said,
work.
it cuts the phlegm. Except it should be hard liquor.
Any excuse.
Anyway, am I boring you yet?
No, you are not. Though I would like to pause.
Anyway, he would complain about seeing all these big old bluff, brusquely spoken fellows sitting around in a court or something, crying in their beer, hearing the song "The Burden of the Crown" performed. Baldwin of Erebor was something else. He was an excellent field herald. Our kingdom went from the Atlantic Ocean to the California border, and I showed up at the Crown tournament I was knighted at, and he hadn't seen me in 3 years. And he came up to me and presented me with a 3x5 card, and he says, "Are all your titles correct for when I announce you in court?" He had the whole bloody kingdom that went to Utah and to Texas and the Carolinas, and and he had presence and he could perform. Just a exceptional individual. And I don't want to go up because I am still talking about the Lions. I'm trying to set the milieu that the Lions grew in. I was talking about the tournament where I got my finger mashed by Sigmund. It was, again, saying you would fight in persona. Well, at the start of that tournament, and Robin of Gilwell doesn't talk about it all that much. He's very rapier-centric. And I'm sometimes reported as having been anti-rapier, and that's not true. I was just the Earl Marshal and had to enforce the rules as written. But it was a snowball tournament. And Lloyd was king, and he declared he wanted you to fight, direct your troops in persona. But it starts out with all the nobles over here. And okay, well, we don't have that many nobles. All the knights with them. And okay, let's see, a couple of the better squires, you, and you over here. And it was, you would be somebody from this side would challenge you. And you'd fight them, and whoever won would be the leader, and he would accept it. And it turned into pairings after that. But you led the people you defeated. Well, Robin of Gilwell came up, and even with a speech impediment, Robin of Gilwell was always very well spoken. He spoke from the heart. And he sometimes gets a little tedious, as do any of us old timers, but he came up and made a fine speech, and he challenged me. Considering me, whatever, the best representative of chivalry and this sort of thing. And of course I beat him. And somebody took a page from his book and did the same thing. And I wound up with a team that were all members of the Legion of Swashbucklers. And the Legion of Swashbucklers had a wide spectrum of what was on it. You had the people who became the White Scarves.
Mm-hmm.
And you had people who were weird newcomers in the SCA. And the thing is, all you had to do, it was a household organization. All you had to do was, I'm in the Legion of Swashbucklers. And when they held court, you would go into court, even if the queen wasn't there, and all of you would swear the swashbuckler's oath to the queen. And you'd have a lot of these people, because everybody had foils. There were a few who had épées, but they loved to hear the sound of that wire hissing in the air. And so they made elaborate salutes, you know, up, down, around the head, over here, over there, again, up and down, you know, and okay, shut up, Michael. Anyway, this would drag out court. I'd go on about court some other time, how courts were in our run now. Anyway, I'm still talking about lions. Believe it or not. But at this tournament, I was playing Persona because I had this group. And I had a lead-in Persona as a pole. And we got a point where there would have been a bye round. So Lloyd, being king, said, you do not get a bye. I drew a bye. You have to fight the king's team. And he took all the knights who weren't fighting that day and ordered them in the armor. And there was John the Plain and Sigmund the Wing-Footed. And I mean, these weren't slouches. And he just picked kind of the cream of the people who weren't in the tournament and made the king's team and said, okay, Jan, your team has to fight them. And I looked at what I had, and these were all people who were primarily rapier fighters. And in those days, rapier fighters wanted to prove they were in the swing of things. That's why they were in this tournament and entered it. So I went and I said, okay, guys, look, we're going to lose. However, we've got to make a good fight out of this. And basically, I'm telling you how I did this, how I fought as a lion of Ansteora. I wasn't a lion yet, but this is part of what put it there, because Sigmund was on the other side. He was the king who made me a lion later. And I said, look, all of you are good at point control. You can hit a target. So if you've got a thrusting weapon, get it. Here's the plan. We're not going to win, but we're going to go out well. I had them all line up, and most of them had shields. A lot of them had shields and spears, which in SCA rules is not a good combo usually. But we walked forward, and I mean, I played Jan Sobieski. I went out in front with my wing shield, and that tournament, I used to do this. I would play by rules I set in my old head and not tell anybody. I had made a new axe. It was a one-handed axe, but a long haft. It was based on what Red Orm used. Not a hash to Denmark, you know, the big one like at Hastings, but a one-hand Viking axe. And I was, going to fight with nothing but that day. So I went forward and lined my troops up, and we just walked at the enemy. And I said, when I throw away my shield, that's the signal. And I walked out and threw my shield at the feet of Sigmund, grabbed my axe in two hands, and the whole team charged. and their line shattered. I mean, it just scattered. And the thing I had told them was, I don't care if you win or not. I don't care if you kill anybody, but I want you to not stop attacking. And you had people with 2 hands on a spear, 2 hands on a one-handed sword, whatever they had, and they just attacked. And we rocked these people back on their heels. And the thing is, my left hand had the shield on it, so I didn't have a gauntlet or anything, so I threw away my shield. So I'm out here fighting, and I took out a couple of people. And I remember once I was backpedaling, this guy decided to press me because he had a shield and I didn't. And I was going block, block, block. And I went, oh, there's John the Plane going to kill that guy. No, he's not, you know. And in the course of it, we were actually making a good fight of it, except for Sigmund. He wasn't Duke at the time. He would just count. Actually, Jarl. And let's be correct here, because that was important today to use your title, which is why I still am probably a Jan. And thing is, I couldn't fence with Sigmund at a distance. His arms are so much longer than mine, and his sword had more reach than my axe. So I ran right up and chest bumped him and got inside his shield. I'm doing one of these. And that wasn't doing anything to him. But ultimately, I was kind of wrestling and trying to push Sigmund around, which is a losing proposition. I mean, I'm kind of big and fat now, but in those days, you know, Sigmund's much bigger than I am. And I forget, I think Sigmund got me himself, but he had other people come up. But the point is, I played Lloyd's game. I mean, at Vienna, Jan Sobieski took 100 winged hussars and said, attack. He didn't know if there was enough daylight left to deal with the Turkish army. And they rode through the Turks, rode back out, and there was a small fraction of them left alive. And he said, yep, we can do it. And launched the biggest cavalry charge in the history of the world. Well, I was playing that way. These guys, if we stand up and make a shield wall and play pokey pokey with them, they're ultimately going to break us down. We went out gloriously, chivalrously. And I think everybody on my team, from Robin Gilwell on down, I think Shamano was on it too. You know, it was a tournament. Thing is, yeah, as I was taken out, actually, I partially blocked the blow. I accepted. And I'm not going to go into, you know, people talk about old injuries. You don't want to hear that. Anyhow, second Lion of Ansteorra.
Who was the second one?
Oh, come on now. Ivar Battleskull. Well, he started out in the SCA as Ivar of the Volga. He was a Varangian Rus. And thing is, it kind of got easy for people to corrupt that into calling him Ivar the Vulgar. And so at the Crown tournament that Finn Kelly won, we kind of went aside and with a few people who wanted to play the game. And Ivar was tremendous for playing Persona. And we just declared that over there is a barrow mound. And Orm went off in the darkness and called his name and had an eye patch and dressed up and played like Odin, and called him, and he searched in the barrow and came out with a thing that had raven feathers and other stuff. In any case, we went through this whole elaborate procedure to give him his new name, Ivar Battleskull, because he was well noted for performances. And he went on to do we went back. You see, in those days, nowadays, we have become like what we used to laugh about at the East Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, that they don't camp out at events except at Pennsic. That's the one event they do. They're Pennsic kingdoms. Pennsic's all they do. In Onsteora, we would camp at everything. Nowadays, even here in Bjornsburg, you know, they got an event and there's a few people there, but everybody goes away as soon as they can, get back to the motel or just get back home.
It's different up here it's different up here in Northern Onsteora. Events do tend to have a lot of camping for the most part.
That's why I love the northern part of the kingdom. I agree with you 100%. And the events are still about the same size they used to be. We've got more people in the kingdom, but people don't travel as far. So the amount of people at any given event's about the same. You want to look at the number of people. That's why I've got a couple of titles since, you know, with my gray beard and hair in Eldern Hills. And I was a close second at Namron. You see, I'm kind of down to doing arts and sciences and archery. I've got my hematologist says I might bleed to death with a bad bruise, and I got my heart guy says, my cardiologist says, and I'm not supposed to ride horses anymore. Red Orm and I did some of the first, I don't think they do really mounted combat. They do jousting, but they don't do combat the way we did. Red Orm and I and Suleshka von Ferdental and Tanasan Dimberthil, we used to do mounted combat way back. I got some photos of that too.
Which you can have because we took them.
Yeah, I took them. And it's why I like events up north, and I go to as many up there as I can afford to. I mean,
So,
you've seen me at more than 40th and North Keep.
I have. So here's a question for you, Jan. We had a story told earlier, and I was hoping that you might be able to confirm or deny it.
Okay.
And that was that when Jan became king, that he went directly from the crown tournament to the local copy center, or I'm sorry, my apologies, Lloyd, thank you. That he went directly to the local copy center and made multiple copies of the Kingdom Law because he was big into Dungeons and Dragons and he wanted to be able to refer to the actual rules and make sure that the kingdom was running the way it was supposed to, according to the rules.
It's a copy shop.
Well, that's phrased a little strangely, but Lloyd ran a copy. He still does runs a copy business. And in those days, we didn't have the internet.
Mm-mm.
He did the Kingdom newsletter at cost.
Mm-hmm.
The Kingdom just paid him the cost of paper and staples and that sort of stuff. All the work and, you know, any charges that you pay at any other copy shop were set aside. But when he was king, and believe me, the current marshalate rules are a mess. They're a combination of stuff I wrote decades ago, juxtaposed with little pieces of crap that have come up since then. And part of it is, and again, it's another story for another day, the SCA, the big picture, started imposing itself on Onsteora during my reign. Inman really dealt with the big pushes later on. But no,
I
Inman.
want to know the answer to the question.
And no, I'm coming. I'm not losing. I mean, I wander, but I come back to the point. One, he didn't go to a copy shop. He had his own. Two, he believed that if you had the martial rules on more than one page, nobody'd really read them except for sea lawyers.
He's not actually wrong.
You know, he wanted to put it on a thing that you could just have a bunch of them and hand them to newcomers. These are basically the rules, you know. And he narrowed it down because he was the lawgiver. The laws were never published during the first reign. During his reign, the laws of Unsteora came out. He was a very, you know, he's a very forceful, and he put a lot of people off. And he would speak so aggressively, a lot of people would not like what he had to say. I remember I'd have arguments with him from here to Sunday. And he'd never give an inch. However, I'd hear a month later at another event, he'd be arguing some of the arguments I used. Some of it he'd accept.
Pick some of that.
It would come in.
So this is a real big long shot, but is there any way you can put me in contact with him and I could talk to him about his reign?
His wife just commented on a thing. I think
The Nostalgia Group.
Yeah, she's on that.
Yeah, his lady came into it.
Karen Von Aker.
Yeah.
Or Karen Aker is the name.
Yeah, his name is Eaker, you know.
He just stuck a Von in it for his SCA name.
Okay.
Well, he put an E in front of it, or an A in it. One thing I would like to point out, and this is a story that I watched it develop while I was Earl Marshal and other things. He really disliked the way some fighters would, when they got their opponent's leg, would stand where they couldn't reach them and walk a circle around them and make them on their knees keep, you know, turning to face them. And he, when he was Earl Marshal, outlawed that. He called that corkscrewing. And it was defined as standing outside the opponent's weapon's reach and walking around him. Later on, when I was Earl Marshal, I was at a tournament in Stargate. And somebody had a leg taken, and the opponent rushed up to him and was engaged with him and took a step to the side. And John the Plain of Shern went, "Hold, corkscrewing, you can't do that." And I went, "What?" And he went, "He stepped behind him, an imaginary line to the front. He stepped over it." And no, that wasn't the point. In the early days of Onsteora, we were exceedingly rough and tumble. We could, you know, the idea was if you approached him from the front where he could reach you with his weapon, then all bets are off. You are fighting. Lloyd Von Aker, any fight you ever had against him was as if you were using real weapons and fighting for your life. It was not a little trick shot. It was not stick tag. It was, we are pretending we are really using real weapons. And when I was king, when I became king, I went to the king and said, "I want to fight in Crown Tournament and I'm Earl Marshal." He said, "Don't worry, I'll take over the duties of Earl Marshal, you fight." And it turned out I won the tournament. I really didn't think I was going to, but that's another story that I could talk about for hours.
Yes.
We have 25 minutes left on the conference.
You haven't finished telling about the lions yet.
Oh, this is still.
Is this still about lions?
I married this willingly.
Anyway, the lions. I got an idea. I read a article in American Heritage, which was a magazine published in book form. And in that, they talked about how medieval tournaments and early period tournaments, the first tournaments, had about as much in common with the things done in Tudor England called tournaments as the games that tribesmen in Central Asia play with the heads of their defeated opponents has with modern polo, and went in to talk about it.
Kitty!
Yep.
And I thought that
Kitty.
our SCA rules that we are fighting by say light riveted chainmail, open faced helmet. And why don't we fight a tournament the way that they did it in those days, when the tournaments first started, when they wore the armor we're supposed to be wearing. And I went and sold it to the rest of the order.
How did the order
Whoever
go?
were members of it at the time. And originally the idea was, because I was a baron, I had an inn, so I had a barony that I could try to sell it to.
Question. Were y'all asking about the Tournament of the Lions, which is what he's talking about now, or the Order of the Lions?
This is part
The
of what it
Order
is.
of the Lions.
Okay.
The Order of the Lions. I mean, I had an idea and sold it, but the Order of the Lions made this because this is what we conceived the order to be about. The stories I've told you earlier, fighting in persona, not the best way to win according to the rules, not as a good sportsman, but as a man of chivalry with the equipment of the time. At the first Tournament of the Lions, Ivar Battleskull took one of the little flick shots to the eye, and he said, yes, it wouldn't have killed me, but I wouldn't have been able to win the fight. He fought the rest of the tournament with his eye bandaged so he couldn't see out of it. And he said, I can't go home maimed. I have to die a hero. So he fought like he was a hero trying to die. He fought well. Our early Order of the Lions were trying to enhance the experience. All these little side stories are tangents coming back to what I was trying to say. The Order of the Lions were the defenders of the dream. What we conceived the dream was closer to a reality. Try to be there to where when you're walking down between the tents and a little bit of wood smoke blows towards your face and you hear somebody playing a harp and people talking about weapons technique, and suddenly, just easily, it's not a golden rope where you're going to say, I'm only going to talk forsoothly from now on. But at that moment, you can feel it. On the field, on a list field, you can fight somebody in a close fight, and you can suddenly go, my lord, you struck my leg. I don't think you're as good a fighter on, but that I think was the best blow you could deliver. I will yield to your skill in that blow. Ansteora is still looked upon as an oddball in the rest of the SCA. You see it on YouTube and stuff. They talk about it. How people with just a leg wound will yield in even a crown tournament. And that came from the Lions of Ansteora, pushing forward the idea that there is something to the concept of chivalry, a value that goes beyond just winning this and getting status in the 20th century club. Status in the 20th century club is valid. We're not saying it's crap. We're not saying that you can laugh about this and say, well, it's not really a wound. You're not really suffering pain. Laugh at it, make a joke out of it. That's valid. But there's that moment of reality, that respect. My lady, when we've come back and started going to events, has walked across sites carrying chairs and things because me or my son weren't there. And she's gone the whole length of a campsite or an event site. That would have never happened in the old days. People would have stopped her and carried it for her, asked if there was more. No lady, and not just because she's my lady, I mean newcomers. I've seen among the early dukes and princes, people help newcomers carry their stuff over near the list field so they could watch. And that just doesn't happen. Not the same way. There are individuals, and I love them for doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can make a general statement and you can pick any individual who says it's wrong. But if you think about it, you can see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could just go on. I could go on for days. And yeah, I got pictures and stuff. By the fact that picture my lady showed you, and everybody else has gone away. I've talked too much, obviously. But that was our unofficial event. When my lady and I were married, our SCA marriage took place at the church door in Gniezno. Because medievally you would be married at the church door. Marriage was really a contract. And they have the bronze doors there, which were on the outside. Now they've made a little vestibule, so it's no longer on the outside. But they go back to the 900s.
You could just touch them. They weren't even protected. You could just reach out and touch these doors.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing.
And we just stood there, we had a guide, but she put her hand on the door and addressed me, Jan Vjorgeldom, will you have me as your wife? And I touched the door and we plighted our troth there. When we returned to the United States, we had, and it used to happen all the time, an unofficial event, and invited anybody who can. And we didn't have the internet. You couldn't just,
That's what that picture was from.
Yeah, I told her that. And basically invited anybody who wanted to come and spread the word as best we could. And we had an event. We had a tournament. We had Pepin distinguished himself, which is, again, another story. I think we don't have enough time for that story.
Always distinguished himself.
No, but the goblet.
Oh, yeah.
That was a feat for Pepin. He's slighter of build than I was. I mean, just imagine me not this
I can tell this story quickly. It was a candy dish, like a cut glass candy dish that's about that tall. So the candy dish part of it's like this. It would hold a full bottle of wine. And he poured a full bottle of wine in it and drank it off in toast to Jan, like the whole thing in one draught. Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
And it goes
was he able
back
to walk
my
afterwards?
coronation.
He could walk. He was a little emotional thereafter, but yeah, he could walk.
So just to share a very quick story of my own, when my husband and we held a hand fasting event, and it was an unofficial event, and we held it at the home of a friend, and we invited everybody in the north who could come, and we had about 30 people show up. They pit roasted a pig for us, and we had a formal hand fasting calling the quarters. Our baron and baroness were there as well and part of the rite. And our hands were bound together at an unofficial event, and we had 30 gallons of Master Oxlade McKinnon's beer. We were only able to consume 5 gallons of it, so we brought the rest to the following event, which was great because there were no libations there, and so we were able to provide the entire feast with beer from our hand fasting. So
Wow.
he and I had a hand fasting event, and there was a tournament, and then brand new Sir Jean-Paul Descens won our hand fasting tournament, narrowly beating out Owen ap Aden, who was not yet a knight.
We had a crest tourney. I had made a bunch of styrofoam crests that I had painted and taped them to their helms. And I have this marvelous picture of, it was Pepin and Orm, I think, at the last. Pepin, one of them was on the ground, and he's swinging up, and he is just about to knock the crest off of this guy, and the guy leaning down is just about to knock off his crest. They killed each other because you died when your crest was. It was a perfect shot.
If I can interject here, because I'm still answering the question in my roundabout way. You see, I could answer your question for 2 days. But what you just told me is an example of what I personally used to call playing the game.
My lord, I relate to you.
Finding reality. Oh, please.
Go ahead, Helena.
Yes.
My lord, I relate to you in many ways. I too take too long to tell stories.
Helena is brand new to the society. She has not yet attended her first event, but she's been hearing stories about it from her family members and is looking forward to attending her first event in person.
Where do you
I
live?
hope this sounds appealing.
Where are you located?
Right around Oak Spring.
It's a subsidiary of Namron.
We are far to the south. I don't know if we introduced ourselves. We're both in Bjornsburg, which is San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
But Jan has been the Eldern Hills is Lawton. Jan has been the Eldern Hills archery champion, and I am currently the Eldern Hills arts and sciences champion, and my son back there is the current archery champion. So we come up as often as we can. You can seek us out at any point, and we would be happy to speak with you, hang with you, tell you in stories that last for days.
If you can find a campfire, that's the best milieu.
I have heard as such. Yes, though Beltane would have likely been my first event, as I could maybe theoretically fudge
Helena,
one that didn't happen, yeah.
Helena's sister's first event was on Steor in 40th year, and she and her best friend ran into me about 20 minutes after they arrived on site and didn't have any idea what they were doing and didn't have any idea what they were going to do. And I handed them a copy of the quest, and that was their weekend. So Helena, this good lady, is the one who helped me build that quest.
Oh, we did, yeah.
By the way, did I answer your question about Lloyd well enough?
You did, yes.
Okay.
I didn't even know that they were, apparently what his lady said was that they had gone inactive, and she's gotten more active in her church now. She got into a conversation with Duke Michael of Monmouthshire, who now lives way north. But it was in response to a question about him, and you said you could talk about Lloyd for days or whatever, and somebody said yeah, and then she popped up. But I think it was on the nostalgia group.
Oh, okay. I can tell.
I'll see if I can track it down. Yeah, we have no stories for Lloyd's page. We don't have any stories for your Rain page.
We don't have any pictures. Bryony, did you talk to Bryony? She took some of the older pictures that she's been scanning.
I don't know. We do have a page photograph for the rain, but we don't have any information of things that you did, or, I mean, we have the piers that you made, but we don't have any stories that help to bring the rain to life.
Okay.
Give me an hour, I could tell you a good story about my coronation.
So I'll be doing this again next Sunday. It starts at 7 a.m. and it goes until 10 p.m. And I'm going to be scheduling these hopefully on a regular basis so that people can count on coming. And if you would be available anytime next week from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. to come and tell that story, I'd love to hear it.
You would do that. I think you should probably do more narrow themes and have invited people to speak, because when I've been on stuff from Zoom that has more than about 8 people on it, it gets very, we're trying to do this is my company's platform for some of their meetings.
Understood.
And they've been doing virtual happy hours and it just doesn't work with a lot of people. So we might need to think about structure. It's not a criticism, this worked fine, but there's not many people.
Well,
Yeah, and I wasn't sure whether we were going to have anybody at all, and for a while it was very, very quiet.
I seriously had to work from 7:30 this morning to just 6:30, and it was just like I didn't get up. So that's why I completely forgot. Sorry.
if I can throw out an observation,
Yes.
like your question about the Lions was a very reasonable, very focused question, and I didn't answer it in the focus that you wanted, because
He wouldn't
we
have it
weren't-
anyway.
well, you know, the question itself is focused very much towards the club structure and where it fits in it. And the Lions are totally tied to what makes Ansteora different from the rest of the known world.
That's true.
And even the recent, I mean, it's going to be prestigious simply because a king can only do one.
Mm-hmm.
And when you limit a king, that's kind of a get their attention. There's only been a couple of kings who didn't make
make
it.
any. Yeah.
Other than that, the early Lions, Red Orm, Ivar Battleskull, Megan Glenlaven, me. I mean, you just go on with down the list, were strong personalities who influenced not the politics, not who got awards, not who was the next lion. There were no cliques lobbying for lions. We're not a polling order. We don't want political might by voting for the next member. We just want to do what's best.
The definition of
And
lion.
the person, to be made a lion means that a king has recognized that you have done something special.
The definition, I don't remember who told me this. This was long pre-on, but I was having lions explained to me, and they said it's given to someone who can make an event better, the air sweeter, everything more real, just by being there. And that's still the best definition I've ever heard.
Thank you. That's pretty cool. I have met a couple of lions, not a whole lot. There was a joke that was told at the last roundtable discussion for the Ansteoran Book of Chivalry, where they talked about the lions, and somebody joked, well, my first question is, how long have they been playing in Bjornsborg?
There's a reason for that.
Well, I've never been down to Bjornsborg, so I haven't met a whole lot of lions.
They're not all in Bjornsborg anymore, but see, the Tournament of the Lions was very, very closely associated with the order, and initially it was supposed to be in Bjornsborg southerly, and then it was going to be in the north again. It was supposed to alternate, and then that never happened, and it was just always in Bjornsborg, and it got associated very much with the south.
The populace of Bjornsburg understood and bought into the concept.
early Bjornsborg then was almost in character and feel and vibe and in intensity and activity, very much like Eldon Hills now.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Except they had me.
Oh, well, yeah.
Well, I mean, Hills has you now.
Okay, I can almost hear the peanut gallery talking, but not quite.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Never mind.
Okay.
Oh, now I'm curious.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes before the meeting expires. I wanted to thank everybody for showing up and participating. I've really enjoyed the stories that we've had shared, and I hope that we can get more people the next time. I will probably do things like mute all participants except the person who's speaking, and maybe try and put in some time limits
Can you
for
do a hand
topics.
raise thing?
I'm sorry?
Can you do like a hand raise thing like in Adobe Connect
Yeah,
to ask a
you
question?
can. You can.
Okay.
I believe so.
I don't know the mechanics of Zoom very well.
On mobile, it's to the right of the participants button in the more section.
On the desktop version, if you go to the bar where it says security manage participants, see, I don't know if mine's different. There's something called reactions. And
Oh,
you
yeah,
can
yeah, I
do
see it.
thumbs
Okay.
up or applause. And having one of those as the designator of, hey, I'd like to speak next,
I see.
kind of thing,
Okay.
might help us with that.
I can't take it away.
By the way, I'm perfectly willing to shut up and let everybody else talk. I'll just,
There was absolutely no problem with you speaking for the exact direct length of time that you spoke. That was just fine. No one else was clamoring to speak, and I appreciated all that you had to share.
All right. Well, good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you as well. It's a pleasure.
And nice to meet you, Helena. And Rowana, you've been very quiet, but
Yeah, she was going to leave earlier, and I said that we had connected and that you guys were going to be showing up, and she said, well, then I will hang in there just so that I can hear whatever stories Jan might be willing to share.
And I enjoyed every minute of it.
oh, thank you. I wanted to see what the needlework that people were working on too, but I didn't want to interrupt him and ask. So.
Oh, if you'd like to see. I have it right by me.
Oh yeah,
Helena, you've got your camera turned off?
camera turned off.
I turned it off because it was making me cut out earlier. But currently,
Ah.
I am working on a bat in a Chinese style. Can you see it?
Oh yeah.
I'm working on long and short stitching it, which is somewhat of a challenge because I've never done that stitch before this project. So it's less than stellar, but I'm working on it.
And then we also had another lady who was working on a winged fox. She submitted her registered heraldry and is getting to the final stages of her heraldry passing. And so she was embroidering a winged fox that is part of that heraldry.
Her name
I
is
have done some embroidery, but I mostly weave now. Everybody thinks I'm a weaving Laurel. No, I'm not. I just started 2 years ago, still learning how to do it. So I'm always impressed with people who just pick up stuff and go for it, because that's really how you learn it.
So do you take commissions?
Do I take commissions?
Yes, for
Yeah.
heraldry art.
Harold? Oh yeah, I used to do that all the time. What do you need?
Well, I'm working on trying to figure out my achievements, and we had chatted about it very briefly
Okay.
a while back, but I would love to work something up more formally so that I can get that submitted.
Set up a time just for you and me, and we can talk through, and I can sketch stuff out.
That would be super duper awesome.
All right, I will. Do
I would
that.
love that. Cool. All right. Well, the time is gathering close. I don't know if it's just gonna like shut us down or what it's gonna
I
do.
think it does. I think it warns you that the meeting's going to end, and it
Okay.
start doing a countdown that you can see. At least it
Okay.
did with one of our clients recently.
Okay.
only the host can see the countdown.
Okay.
I'm getting in
Or at least
here.
what I'm aware of.
Well, does anybody have a 2-minute story?
Do I have a 2-minute story? Now, when you ask me if I have stories, they go out of my head, just like, what's your favorite song? And you instantly can't remember what your favorite song is. Or you go to the store and you don't remember what you needed until you're on your way home. So I'll think of it after the call, but I will make it a quest to remember stories and tell you.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions on a topic for next discussion?
I just thought of a great Ivar story in terms of how, not Ivar Battle Skull, but Ivar down here, how he got one of his,
Runemagi, yeah.
how he got his name.
So you had submitted that. That's on his wiki page.
Did I really?
Yes,
That's
you
right.
did. You wrote that up and you submitted that for his wiki page.
Then how he got his arms, his armory. He's got 2 moons on his shield, and one of them has a bite taken out of it, and I can tell you why.
Okay, that would be very cool. We do not have that story for his page.
I have it drafted. I haven't sent it to you yet. I told him I was going to do that too. He should just know.
Okay. Well, wonderful. I sure appreciate it. Well, it's now 10 o'clock. The meeting is supposed to be over, but I do not have a countdown.
Okay, well, maybe it might have been Adobe Connect that did that.
Could be.
It's nice to have contact with somebody, you know.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you
By
so
the way,
much.
I'm learning how to use the Madra, I had the picture of, with the bow and arrow thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can shoot very short arrows and I'm starting to be effective.
Very
Well,
nice.
What you do when you can't afford to buy arrows and you have a bow that you really want to shoot and you break a bunch of your arrows because you're learning how, he figured out it's like a groove, a wooden stick with a groove
It's
in it.
historic.
And you draw it on a regular bow and you can shoot little tiny arrows with it. So he's been taking his broken arrows and re-tipping them and shooting little tiny arrows with a full bow using this thing. And apparently it's a thing. I didn't know it actually existed, but
That's
You
really
can
cool.
shoot the crossbow bolts back at the Chinese,
There you go.
all right, we're going to
There you
go
go.
away because you want to go to bed. So
All
nice
right.
to meet y'all. Good to see you. And
Good to see you as
we will
well.
do this the next time.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.